don't know what the devil's trying to throw your way, but give it all to God and allow him to take care of it from here. Sometimes God will allow us to actually go through certain situations, not as a punishment, but as a way to show us the contrast between doing it his way and doing it our way. See, we can sometimes jump the gun and try to move faster than God. But at a certain point, you have to realize the difference between your plan and God's. See, God is not the author of confusion. He is not the author of chaos. He is not the author of anxiety. And he is not the author of insanity. See, if you find yourself in the middle of any of that, we have to take a step back and really see what we have invited in and open the door to. When God says move, that's when you move. When God says to stay, we have to stay. To remember just how present God really is. I'm serious. There is true power in asking God to take care of it for you. It may not happen exactly when you want it to, but it's that perfect God timing that never, ever fails. God is saying to someone right here, right now, shut that door. I'm going to say it again. Shut that door. Sometimes we don't even realize that we have just opened the door to evil. We just constantly look at things we aren't supposed to, think about things we aren't supposed to. And see, that's actually the biggest place where the door gets open is in our minds. And I know some of those intrusive thoughts tend to lead to things that you might not regularly do. It's when we entertain those thoughts, though, that actually cause the biggest chain reaction in our lives. Just the thoughts in and of themselves have something behind them. And I call it the battlefield of our mind. Romans 12:2 says this, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. See, this is where the gift of discernment comes into play. We have to really tap into the Spirit to be able to use this gift, though. And this is why walking by the Spirit is so important. But it's definitely not easy. And honestly, sometimes it's not even fun, especially when we have spent our entire lives, like I have done, just caving to every fleshly desire. You know, we almost self-medicate by giving into the flesh because in a way, we are just simply trying to feel better. But then that rat race begins of trying to feel better, falling into guilt, then shame steps in, and then this vicious cycle back and forth. And I want to say this, shut that door. In fact, go ahead and board up the windows. Proverbs 3:5-6 says this, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. And in all your ways, acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. Did you blow past the conviction? Did you not pay attention to the red flags? Well, even if you did, this is where we need to go to God and ask him to reveal where we can turn back to him and come to our senses to see where we have opened the door. It's like when you poke a bee's nest, right? But see, running back to the Father is the only course of action that can literally and ultimately change the entire situation. Does it mean that we won't have to deal with the consequences of our actions? Absolutely not. But it will definitely help us to gain more wisdom when it comes to the next time that we have to face something like this. So I want to say this, you are going to be just fine. We just need to shut the door. Shut the door to the enemy. Shut the door to our thoughts just running rampant. That what if this and what if that is actually just a distraction. And it's only when we take the time to see how we can do it differently next time that can open us up for a place of understanding. I don't know who this message is for, and I don't know why God is putting this on my heart, but what have you been focused on recently? Have you been putting all your weight on what could go wrong? Or have you been keeping your stance rooted in what God says about you? I know it's difficult to see right here, but you will get there. See, God's got the plan for you. He has created everything from the end to the beginning, meaning that it's all been strung together, and like a needle and thread, God knitted this all in. Jeremiah 29:11 says this, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." See, right here, Jeremiah was actually writing to the exiles in Babylon to express the grace within God's heart. See, they had to pay the consequences by being exiled for 70 years. But it was God's plan to reconcile them back to himself. This exile simply occurred because they disobeyed God and were worshiping all kinds of idols. And see, each prophet made the point that this was God's way of showing them the error of their ways. This is where grace comes in. This is where Jesus steps in. This is where God's mercy should be able to show off. See, not only does God have plans for you, just like he did with the Israelites in this particular story, he knows how to weave everything together. And look at Romans 8:28. This is what it says. "And we know that in all things, God works it for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." So I don't know about you, but I am so glad that we serve a God who knows us. I am so glad that we serve a God who can use all of our screw-ups to remind us of his sovereignty. I know for me, I tend to overanalyze things to the point of overthinking every single detail. And for some reason, my mind always goes there. But this is where we have to surrender our ways and shut the door. Shut the door to the enemy. Shut the door and fix our thoughts back on what is true and acceptable. And I want to speak this over you right now. Your greatest days are not behind you, and you will see the glory of the Father in due time working throughout your life. Okay, so think about how Peter would be fishing all night just to catch nothing. See, Peter owed some major money for his taxes. And I mean, could you really imagine with me for a second being in that time period and not having any means to pay? See, it was within his attempt that ultimately guided him to the miracle. I mean, really imagine what it must have felt like to fish all night and catch nothing. I'm sure his mind was reeling. And we can sometimes forget the persons that we read about in the Bible, that they're actually human beings, that every one of them had the same human emotions we have and dealt with the same stuff we deal with, just in a different culture and context. But see, it was their choice to choose God that led them to the place of purpose. God would have the plan for Peter, though. Watch this in Luke 5:5-6. "Simon answered, 'Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets.' Caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break." See, it was Peter's obedience and the fact that he went out there in the first place to fish that landed him in a place, in a spot of experiencing the power of God in his life. So I don't know what you're facing, and I don't know what you're up against right now, but just allow obedience to pave the way for your God-given purpose. Right here at the end of this video, go ahead and type this: "I may not see it yet, but God's got the plan for my life." Listen, I love you so much. I will see you on the next video.